These notes are going to deal with being able to translate words into mathematical symbols and expressions. And to help you do that, I have designed an operation word frame where the four operations are on the outside and the equal sign is the center of the frame. In each box, we will put words that mean the symbol of addition, subtraction, multiply, divide, and equal sign. And using those words, you will have to be able to translate sentences into mathematical expressions and then write sentences for mathematical expressions. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with all the words that mean to add or put a plus sign. So on your paper, you will need to write down all the words that I'm putting on the word frame, and then we'll use them on examples on the other side. So the most popular words are in addition to, sum, S-U-M, not S-O-M-E, increased by, in all, total, deposits, faster than, added to, combined, plus, altogether, more than, gains, and above. These are not all of the words that mean to put a plus sign or to add, but these are the most popular ones and the ones that you will have to be the most familiar with this class. Right? The opposite of addition is subtraction, so we're going to jump down to the bottom of your frame and write all the words that mean to subtract, and they tend to be the opposite of the words that you just wrote down for addition. Right? So you're going to notice some connections between these. So for subtraction, we have the word minus, which everybody should be familiar with. You have the word subtracted from is the actual phrase. The phrase less than, withdraw, such as when you take out money from a bank account, take away, smaller than, decreased by, difference, loses, fewer than, below, and those are pretty much the big ones. Now, in the world of subtraction, order does matter, because if you put things in a different order, you're not going to get the same answer as you would if you switch them around. So there's a few phrases that you really have to watch out the order of how you write them and that you translate them correctly. The big phrases are the words subtracted from and less than. When those two phrases appear in your sentence, you have got to pay attention to how it's asking you to write the problem, because if you switch it up, it makes it wrong. So we're going to focus on that in our examples and in class to make sure that we're okay with what's going on. Okay, so now let's go over and switch to multiplication, and then we'll switch and do the other side of division. Okay, there are not as many words that mean to multiply and divide, so you're going to notice that our list is a little shorter, right? And they're not quite as opposite words like the adding and subtracting words are. All right, the most popular ones are times, product, which product is the one you will see over and over again for this class. The word each means to multiply, multiplied by, the word of. When you take a percentage of something, the word of means to multiply. Twice, right? And along with the word twice, the word double does the same thing. You multiply by 2. Okay. There's some old-fashioned words out there that your grandparents and parents might have heard of, and that's like threefold or tenfold. Those mean to multiply as well. Okay. The words squared and cubed, which come from your exponents, signify that you're multiplying. And then the word triple sometimes sneaks in there. Okay. Let's go over to the division side, right, and we'll get those words going as well. Right. Divided by tends to be pretty popular. The big quotient word is the one you're going to want to know the most. So product and quotient are going to be your really big algebra words. So do make sure you know the difference between those. Separate, split, shared among, the word per. You're talking about speed, 5 miles per hour. Right? It's written as a ratio, and ratios are division problems. Right? The word half. Now the word half is going to be special. It goes over here in the division problem because you can divide by 2, right? But you can also put half in multiplication because you can multiply by 1/2 because you can take half of something. So it really depends on how you write it as to whether it's a multiplication or a division, but that's the only word that actually ends up on both sides. Okay, and that actually looks like it's all of the division words for us. All right, so now we want to tackle the center box of the frame, which is your equal sign. And most of these words, if not all of them, should be familiar, but there might be one or two that you hadn't thought of before that does mean to equal. All right, obviously the most normal one and the one that you've seen the most is the word equals. Okay, along with that, you're going to have the same as. That phrase means to put an equal sign. Equivalent to is another way to say it. Yields is more of a science word, but in math it would translate into an equal sign. Okay. The word gives, and the most popular one, and actually the shortest one, is the word is. As soon as you see the word is in a sentence and they're asking you to translate it, you have to put an equal sign where that word is. All right, so there is your completed word frame, and use these to help you translate your examples into actual algebraic expressions. So now I'm going to switch over to your back side of your paper where you have some examples of what we're going to have to do in this class. You're going to have to write algebraic expressions from a verbal expression, which is from the words, and then you're going to have to write verbal expressions for the actual algebraic ones. So we're going to do both ways. Right? So we're going to take this pretty slowly and in chunks, and then we're going to hopefully end up with the way it's supposed to look. Okay, keep in mind that there is more than one way to write the verbal expression, but the algebraic expression tends to be limited. So for number 1, the quotient of m and x squared. Well, quotient means to divide, so as soon as you see that, you need a division sign. For division signs, I do not want you using the elementary version that's aligned with the 2 dots. I want you to use a fraction bar for this. And then whatever comes in front of the word and is your numerator, or your top spot. So that m comes up top, and we're dividing that by x squared. So your expression would look like this, m divided by x squared. For number 2, there's 2 ways to write this one because of the word 1/2. It's saying 1/2 the cube of number x. Right? So we're going to take 1/2 of the variable x that we don't know, and that x is cubed. So that's one way to write it, where you're taking 1/2 of that value. Right? But there's another way to write it if you're thinking of 1/2 as dividing by 2. You can write x cubed divided by 2, and that's also taking 1/2. So I've shown you both the multiplication and the division way. They both mean the same thing, and both are equally right. So there's no way I can mark you wrong either way. Just pick one and stick with it. For number 3, there's a lot more words and a lot more going on, so we need to take it in smaller chunks. Plus, it's got one of those phrases that we have to watch out for. With the words less than, remember, we have to pay attention to the order of how we want to write this. If 6 is less than something, put your minus sign, but the 6 can't go in front of the minus sign because it's smaller than something, so it has to go in the back. So as soon as you see the words less than, whatever sits in front of those words has to go behind the subtraction sign. Now we keep reading to see what goes in front. The product, which means multiply, of a number and -2. I don't know what number that is, so that's where I stick in a variable, and then obviously -2 is with it. So we have -2 times our x, and then the -6 is there. We are going to increase that by, which means add, the 5th power of x. So you put the variable x to the 5th power. Okay, so that's how that one's going to look. All right, the last 3 examples are going to be asking you to translate the algebraic expression into words. You can use whatever words from your frame that you want to, as long as they are semantically going to work. In other words, when you read it back, does it translate to what you started with? If it doesn't, then your words don't make sense. Okay, so for the first one, right, there's some different variations of this, so just because I put one version up here does not mean it is the only version. Right, so do keep that in mind as you're writing these down. Right, one way you could possibly write 5n squared minus 6 is to write the product, which means multiply, of 5 and n squared. Do make sure you are using words for every mathematical symbol that you've got. Okay? Diminished by, which is your phrase for subtraction, 6. Okay, so that would translate very quickly and easily into what we started with. Right? And again, there's more variations of this, so if you want to run something by me in class to see if what you wrote is good, I'll let you know. All right, for number 5. Right? Again, there's multiple ways to write this, but this is one version. The product of 12 and y cubed divided by 5. You do not have to use words for the actual numbers, right? But you do have to use words for everything else, right? So your big numbers, you can actually write them as numbers, but then all your other stuff needs to be written as words. Okay, so for number 6, right? When we have a radical, okay, on the outside we don't call it radical. We actually say the square root of 7, because that's exactly what it says, but you put it in words. You have to write it all out. Okay, so the square root of 7. Any word you want to insert for plus sign, so I'm going to use increased by. The product of 3 and p. And again, this is one version to write this, but there are many other versions that would be just as correct. But again, it comes down to when you read your sentence back to yourself, does it translate to what you started with? And that's something we may have to work on a little bit in class. Right? So hopefully you find this something that you can understand and that is not too difficult for you for right now.